What's up, guys, and welcome back to another discussion of Better Call Saul. This is for episode 9 of season 6 part 2, essentially. So this one is called Fun and Games. So if how the previous episode ended, we are left with basically Jimmy and Kim having to deal with the situation of the whole cover-up of the death of Howard, and they have to go to work and act like nothing strange has happened after this whole ordeal. So that is the cold open of the episode. We essentially see Kim and Jimmy's day, and all things seem to be going quite well. We've got this music called A Perfect Day on in the background, so it's quite a juxtaposition when you're hearing A Perfect Day, where they're probably going through their worst day of their lives in the workplace. So I thought it was a really nice touch, a really quite cool of a montage, an intro opening section. So it was fun to see how they were coping with the situation, and honestly I was surprised by how well they were coping with it. And one thing that kind of not hit home, but it's definitely something relatable. At the end of their day, we see, as you can see in the image there, we see when Kim and Jimmy both finally get home from their day and get back into their house, they kind of just can let themselves go and reveal just their true selves after hiding in their skin essentially for the whole day. We've all had one of those days in work or somewhere where you've had a really, really bad day and you have to keep on a brave face. And as soon as you walk into your house or your bedroom or whatever, you can kind of let that facade fall down. And that's exactly what happens in this scene. As soon as Kim gets in the house and puts her keys down, she just kind of stares off into oblivion. So they did an excellent job of staying normal, but you can tell inside that these guys are very devastated and still in shock about what has happened. So I just thought that was a really sort of relatable scene. So the next thing we do see in the episode as well, which is another excellent scene. I always do love it when they bring in the whole sort of cartel and the Salamanca family into the story. And now we're having a scene essentially where Gus has to kind of make the Salamancas and the cartel believe that he was not behind the death of Laylo or the disappearance of Laylo, because no one really knows that he is dead at this point, I guess. It's always fun when we get to see these guys rounded up around this whole pool area from the old Salud episode. So every time there's characters in this location, like, you never know if anyone's going to be safe just because of how brutal and spiteful some of these characters can be. They'll kill you for like no reason. And obviously we saw Gus's old friend or partner killed here many years before this whole story played out. So Gus himself knows what he's in for. What it comes down to really is that Hector and the Salamancas are trying to persuade Don Eladio to take care of Gus for what he has done or what he thinks he's done, but there is no proof that Gus has done this. And I mean, Gus has some extremely big balls to be sitting there, but he obviously knows that they don't have proof. And I mean, it's a risk with how sadistic some of these characters are. They could have just killed him just out of the fear that he may be a rat. Gus kind of sticks to his guns here, so he's definitely being a character that has basically, he knows they can't do anything about it, and he always is 2 steps ahead of what they're doing. So Hector's ringing his bell, and they're basically telling Gus to look Eladio in the eyes and tell him that he's not a traitor, and it doesn't really go out how you would imagine it. You think that obviously Gus is going to come out of this situation okay, but Eladio actually tells Gus after this conversation that when he did look into his eyes, he saw hate. And that is exactly what Hector told Eladio is what Gus was feeling. But I think Eladio has always been quite partial to, he just cares about the money and the business. He probably doesn't even care that much about Hector's family. So he's kind of just trying to keep things straight and keep the peace. And there's one thing I wasn't quite sure about as well, is with Bolsa, the lawyer in this, he kind of backs up Gus by saying that the information about Nacho working for the Peruvians or something is legit. Now, I'm not sure if he just thinks that is true, or if he knows if Gus is being a traitor, but he's trying to keep it to himself because he knows that he's in for a big piece of this whole this meth business cake. I'm sure it's something that we will figure out as we progress through the story, because Gus and Bolsa end up having peace, and they basically have half of the territory of Albuquerque. So this is really where the story is going to get going, with Gus being left on his own to control this whole sort of section of New Mexico, whereas the cartel will stay more on the other side. I think it's the southern side. So following this, we get a scene where Gus is basically, he is just filled with relief after going through all this turmoil of being locked away, all his men guarding him 24/7. And we see it with a scene of him going around his house, opening up all the shutters. So he's at peace. He thinks he's safe now. So this is the thing that Gus needed. He needed to get over this whole Laylo thing, because he was only one of the characters who could kind of outmatch him in his intelligence. Having him taken care of and the peace being given to him Gus is now able to gain his confidence back and become this well suited and booted man who's always meticulous in the way he looks and things. He was slipping slightly with this whole Layla situation, but now we're going to see him get back his confidence and just become the Gus we know from the show of Breaking Bad. As with this, he goes out to celebrate. He's out on the streets, no guards, no people. And this is where we get a little bit more information about his sort of his love life, his sexuality. I'm not quite sure if we ever got a confirmation whether he was homosexual or bisexual or whatever. I'm not sure we ever got that, but it's definitely proven in this episode where he's talking to this barman in a wine bar who he seems quite smitten with. They're talking about his youth on the vineyards in Italy or wherever. And you can see that Gus is like really lets himself relax here and be invested in this guy's story. And I think it's one of the first times we've seen Gus just actually be himself when there's no one around, there's no business going on. He's free to just be who he is. And this scene sort of seems to be heading in a positive outlook, even though we know that Gus is up to these despicable things and the things he's done. He still wants to be happy. He still wants to have this little bit of a victory, a little celebration, just a taste of it. It feels like Gus is about to take this guy home and just live his life. And when he's drinking the wine and he's swirling it around, and it's a really, really cool scene. He's looking into the wine glass and he's watching the water swirl around the red wine. And in my eyes, he's picturing his old partner being killed at the pool with the blood filling the water. That's what it meant to me. That's my first instinct about it. And we saw it previously when he was at the pool with Eladio after the meeting. He stood there and just kind of looked into the water. So with this, he took one look at that glass of wine with the swirling blue wine, and he kind of told himself that, no, I can't go through this. I'm not allowed to have any of this happiness. I'm not allowed to do any of these things that normal people do because bad things happen. He's going to die. So this is probably the point where his character kind of switches off and becomes the Gus we know, just the cold, calculated man who is all business, no personality, no friendship, besides the one that he portrays to the world as the chicken man, the owner of Paulos Hermanas. I will go back to this one slightly towards the end as well, but this has a very sort of mirror image to one of the final shots of this episode, which there's a lot of symbolism and mirror images all throughout these shows, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and this one is definitely a similar one. Just like the Ozymandias sideways face smile, this is an iconic sort of transformation image. We see a little bit of Mike in this episode, not too much. We see him clearing up the bodies in the first scene, which is his perfect day. This is him, he's going to work, he's clearing up bodies, he's using these UV lights, and he has a big sticker board full of pictures, but something's bugging him in this episode. He is looking through all the things that he's hiding away as he's about to sign it, as he's about to wind down from his day of covering up murder. And he finds the ID of Nacho's father. We can only assume that he still feels a lot of guilt for Nacho's death with how it happened, and basically how he went out. The way he went out was like the best way he could have done it. Finding his father's ID, he being a father himself whose son was actually killed, we see that Mike has a moment where he knows what it's like to lose a child, and he knows that Nacho's father must be going through a horrible time, a similar time, and the closure is needed. So Mike, quite foolishly, honestly, I think this guy going out there and putting his face to face with the other guy is potentially a risk for himself, but obviously nothing too bad happens to him for a while. So he meets up outside of Nacho's dad's garages, and he tells Nacho's father exactly what happened. He told him he's dead, they're never going to find the body, he was killed quick, it wasn't painful, and that justice will be served against the Salamancas. And Nacho's father gives a really good point to him. He's like, this isn't justice, it's revenge, and that how all of you criminals are all the same. It's like once you get into that world, you all become the same. Like morally, even if you're a good person and you do good things, if you end up in this dark track, there's only a couple of ways out of it, really. So Mike doesn't seem too pleased with this, but he also seems to realize that he's probably right, and that probably also goes back to his time where he was on the take as a sort of cop, because everyone else was on the take, and if you weren't on the take, you were going to be hushed. And this is what happened to his son in when it happened in the first series when we were told about it. So he probably feels a bit of guilt about himself about that whole situation as well after hearing that. Dealing with the death of Howard, which already sucked. It was already very depressing in the previous episode. we are now given a funeral scene for Howard, and there's just all these pictures all over the place of Howard smiling and playing golf and just being his happy self. And if you felt bad for him already, you're going to just continuously feel even worse and worse as you see more about Howard and all these people here at his funeral and the people talking about him. Jimmy and Kim have to show their appearance. I think it's at the actual Howard, Hamlin and McGill law firm, so all of the old people that they knew were there, so they have to show their faces and they have to actually speak to Howard's wife and give their condolences. And this is a scene where I wasn't quite sure how everyone was going to react. I always thought Kim was going to be the one to crack, but it seems to me that Kim is just on top form manipulation here, and she gives Howard's wife an inkling that he was a drug addict, even though it's completely false. So I mean, they're giving them some kind of closure, but also making him seem like a terrible person when we all know he was not that bad. She doesn't believe it, but Kim plays the role perfectly, which really upsets Howard's wife. And even in the scene, as you can see from the thumbnail here, Jimmy is just racked with guilt, and he's probably thinking like, how can Kim be so good at doing this when he's always supposed to be the one who's been the conniver, the schemester. It seems like Kim is almost better at it than he is. And then we have the big build-up scene. This is something that we've been building up to for almost, 4 or 5 seasons now. Kim is not in Breaking Bad, so it was always going to go south. There was never going to be a happy ending, or as far as we know so far, let's say that. Kim gives up her law license. Jimmy comes home and tries to shock it out of her to make her go back and regret the decision and get her law degree back, or whatever it is, her job. And she's had none of it. She's completely done with what she's done. She just isn't the person that needs to be in front of a jury or preaching innocence of people when she is being a part of something as horrible as the death of Howard and co. And you can see that Jimmy is kind of grasping at straws here, trying to figure out a way to not ruin their lives, but it's already been made up, because when he goes into the room, Kim has packed her bags and she's leaving, and this is really a gut-punching scene. I mean, we were always expecting either her to die or something bad to happen, and as far as we know, this is just a breakup scene, and it's still a gut-punch seeing them go through it because of how much they've been through and just the whole situation that's just happened. Most people have been through some similar situation to this, whether it's mutual or whether it's a 2-part decision, but seeing this on screen, these characters that you love, that you know something's going to happen, it's just a matter of time and how it happens. It's it's a bit of a gut punch, and they both did a really good performance. Seeing Jimmy being this desperate, trying to hold on to her, and just the words he was saying, you feel so bad for him, because they are a bit of a disaster couple, but at the same time they were quite good for each other. But that's exactly the point. They're poisoned together because all the things they've been doing has took them down this road to where they are now, with people dying and people's lives being ruined. So in Kim's mind, she's obviously made up the decision that even if they love each other, they have to go separate ways, or else just more people are going to be hurt. And this is essentially the clinching point here for Jimmy, I think, becoming Saul Goodman. I don't know what happens next with Jimmy, but after this, we are moving swiftly on to his transformation into Saul Goodman. As Kim is out of the picture, we don't exactly see what happens, but we're moving into a flash forward, which we can only imagine is at least 2-3 years into the future, at least. And this is the scene. The final scene of this episode is the first introduction to our new character, almost, Jimmy McGill as Saul Goodman. And this is one way to make you feel bad about the aging process of humans, because if you can see this image here, Jimmy has always looked a lot more youthful in Better Call Saul compared to Breaking Bad, and I never really thought of them looking too much different. But when you see this shot here, it's almost like something from a horror movie where the character has all the mirrors broken in the house because they don't want people to see how they look. Just seeing Jimmy's sort of downward spiral in looking after himself, or just the aging process and the stress he's been through, is clearly taking a toll on the way he looks. And just seeing the man with this awful comb over trying to put it in place. He's obviously in the mansion that we see from the cold open of the first part of the season. So he's been treated well in life, wealthy, and that's because of probably who he became and the things he was willing to do. We can only imagine that he's cut himself off from the Jimmy character. He's cut himself off from sort of the emotion of, well, just being human after what he's been through. So it adds like a whole new layer onto watching Jimmy in Breaking Bad now. Some of his one-liners and his jokes, like, were always quite funny, but I think now I'm going to see him just as a tragic character. I'm always going to be thinking about what he's been through over these last series and things that have happened to him and all the wrongdoings against him, even though he's not the most perfect of human beings. But all the things that have been happening to him over those 6 seasons, it just makes me feel bad for him and his character. I'm going to be thinking about that every time I see a scene with him, whenever I watch Breaking Bad again. I've seen a lot of people saying, like, oh, when the first season of the show came out, they can't wait to see his transformation into Saul Goodman. And now that we've got him, now we want Jimmy back. We want the character of Jimmy back because he's long gone. And obviously with us knowing where he ends up in, well, for the most part, in Breaking Bad, it's not pleasant. So we know we still have the whole Jean storyline to pick up. I definitely think this is not the last we've seen of Kim. Whether we see her in this Breaking Bad timeline or whether she's still around and kicking in the Jean timeline, who knows? We might even be able to have some form of happy ending for them to meeting up again all these years later. But that is something for the finale, I imagine. So yeah, that is all I've got to really say about this discussion for. So that's all I've really got to say for this discussion of episode 9, Fun and Games. Definitely a plot heavy episode, which has pushed the story massively forward, massively in time as well. So it's basically going to be like watching a whole new season, I think, next episode, with such a time jump and all the stories coming to a head. So I can see that the title is called Nippy for episode 10. So it's going to be the first one so far which only has the one word title, which I'm wondering if there's some significance to that. Perhaps it's something to do with the two personalities of Jimmy and Saul. Now we don't have that anymore. We're just getting the one words for Saul because he is just Saul Goodman now. Jimmy is gone. I can't wait to watch the next episode. I should be able to get the video up a lot sooner next time because I'm not working the day the episode comes out. So that should be good to get it up and get it ready for you guys to watch as soon as the episode is done. So that's going to be it for my discussion / spoiler review, etc. for Better Call Saul episode 9. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. So what did you think? Did you think you saw any cool symbolism or mirrors or just really detailed things that you may not have picked up on your first watch? Just let me know down below, and I'll see you guys with episode 10 very soon.